Hello and welcome to video number 10. My name is Jessie from rockstarjessie.com. I'm delighted that you're here. Thank you so much for so many messages, so many great questions. Today's question is, what is the difference between the fear of success and the fear of failure, and what can we do about it? The fear of success is a fear of the unknown. It's a fear of what's on the other side of what we don't know. What if our skills aren't up to par? What if we don't quite cut it? The fear of failure is a fear of rejection. It's a fear of worthiness. It's a fear of confidence and not being good enough for what we should be good enough for right now, today, in this moment. The two have paralyzing effects, and they're very similar in that way. Our responses to being vulnerable both put us in a state of vulnerability. And we want to hold a little closer, and we step a little away from our power when we're in that state of vulnerability. It creates procrastination and avoidance. I have an embarrassing example of this. When I did the Camino de Santiago in 2014. I wrote the book last year in 2015, Writing the Camino Dragon. I put off that walk for 7 years. I was so afraid. I knew in 2007, I read a book by Shirley MacLaine called The Camino. She was into reincarnation and things. That's not why I was drawn to it. More of it's a heightened energy source and also this crazy adventure, and I liked that. I just knew. I knew it was a pilgrimage I was supposed to take. So I hid from it. It's so far. I don't speak Spanish that well. How am I going to get the time off work? I had excuse after excuse after excuse after excuse. So I put it off. And in 2009, I read another book, Paulo Coelho. And he wrote a book called The Pilgrimage. And his pilgrimage still different from mine, part of an ancient society looking for a sword, a little bit of a different turn on events. But I still needed to do this walk, and at that point I made the decision, okay, I will do it one day at some point, years in the future, and I put it aside again. In 2014, my dear friend Giselle called me to ask me, have you seen the movie The Way? And I hadn't seen the movie, but she was explaining this ancient walk people had been doing for centuries across Spain. Oh, it's over 400 miles. Oh yeah, I know exactly what walk you're talking about. Count me in, I'm supposed to do it. So finally I had the guts to do it. But it took me 7 years, and I almost shudder to think where I would be now if I had just sacked up and did it in 2007. I knew I could do it. If I couldn't do it, it wouldn't be a desire of my heart. Of course I had the strength to overcome it, but I lacked the faith in myself. So I procrastinated. I was so afraid of failing. I was afraid of succeeding. I didn't know what it was going to be like. I didn't know what would be on the other side. I was, of course, afraid of something bad happening to me. So I just put the whole thing off. And that was silly because I'm facing a new fear, and I'll talk about it in a future video. But it's going to be just like most fears, out of your comfort zone, something you haven't done before. You face the fear, and the only way to really get beyond that, and what do we do about the fear of failure or the fear of success, is you have to take steps to move through the fear. Fear comes to us in this very real form. And so it's almost like we can feel it. We feel it inside, but it's almost like this barrier, but you move through it. It's not a wall. It's not a permanent barrier, and we give ourselves permission to move through it by taking steps toward it. And eventually we get enough momentum and enough going to where we can. And the faster we go, the faster we grow. So pretty soon I'm like, I could do the Camino again tomorrow. I'm going to do the Pacific Crest Trail. I'm going to do the Appalachian Trail. From there, the possibilities really open up. I'm not doing those next. Those are not the fears I'm talking about. But I did want to talk about Eleanor Roosevelt, because she had this brilliant quote that said, do something every day that scares you. Do something every day that scares you. And of course, I'm like, okay, Eleanor, well, what'd you do? What did you do every day that scared you? So in looking at her life, I'm going to share a few tidbits about her, because she is positively fascinating. Her mother died from tuberculosis when she was 8, and her father died in an asylum when she was 10. She married Franklin D. Roosevelt, which is how she became First Lady eventually, but he first suffered from polio. She overcame this shyness. She was so shy, and she was very embarrassed about how she looked because she wasn't typically considered societally beautiful, you know, by the form, but brilliant. She had this mind on her and this writing ability. And so she challenged her husband, who was confined to a wheelchair, and who became the governor of New York and then to become president. And he had political aspirations and had this great ability, and she's really the one who encouraged him to face that fear and to get beyond that. In addition, she fought racism in a very powerful way. She resigned from the Daughters of the Republic because they refused to have an African American singer, opera singer, fantastic, talented woman. And she invited that same individual, Marian Anderson, to come and sing at Lincoln Memorial the following month in front of an audience of 75,000 people. As a result, she had a $25,000 bounty put on her head by the KKK, and she had business to attend to. She did all of FDR's traveling for him because it was more difficult. She would travel internationally and to those prime KKK areas. She refused to have Secret Service. She had a pistol that she carried. She knew how to use it. Good for her. And she just had a very pro-life, just amazing way of conducting herself and of living. And even furthermore, it didn't stop there. And she was 75 when she was driving through these KKK areas. Just nuts, just awesome, right? And then of course FDR fooling around, and so she was like offered him a divorce, right? Very unpopular for the time period, facing her fears, but you know, hey, that scares me. Well, I'm going to do that because it seems like the right thing to do. And obviously he didn't take her up on it because she was amazing and he wanted to hold that together. So it made sense. But I encourage you to pick, what is it that you're afraid of? And then choose one thing to do today to move toward that fear. Move toward that fear. And looking in retrospect, look at your past. What is one thing that you've overcome? Something you were afraid of that you overcame. You can think back to when you were a child, when you were a teenager, early adult, you know, whatever stage you're in now. What is something that you were afraid of that you faced and you did anyway? I would love to hear about it. Feel free to post before. Continue sending me messages. I love them. And I will see you tomorrow. Thank you so much for joining me. Mwah. Video number 10. All right. We are a third of the way done. All right. Love you guys. And I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.